Based on a True Struggle is a weekly podcast hosted by Eric Diamond and David Miller. The series focuses on the struggles that we all face in our daily lives, be it personal or business. Each episode, Eric and David delve deep into their own struggles and provide insight on how they're using these struggles to their advantage as they try to redevelop the landscape of one community in Ohio. Hope you enjoy this week's episode.
All right, it's Eric and David bringing you our first episode of Brought to You by True Struggle. David, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm excited to do this.
It's been a while.
Uno, number one.
Let's do it. So what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to set the standard, right? We're going to do the Eric Diamond interview. That's fitting.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of set the stage, right? We want to get to know you. We want our listeners to know more about you and the journey that you've been through and the reason why we even came up with this podcast in the first place. So I have some questions. Cool. I'm going to be the person who interviews you.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Let's do it.
You ready to go?
I'm ready. Feeling good.
All right. Eric, first, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so how far do you want me to go back? From the beginning?
Well, just a little bit.
All right, sounds good. So let's see. Born to a single mom, never really knew my dad. Grew up in inner city Cleveland, which, hey, looking back, I actually have fond memories, but going through it at the time, not so much. Mom remarried when I was young. I was probably 7 or 8. Nice enough guy, but he and I just never had a lot in common. So I think I spent a lot of time early on by myself or with friends. Really, as I was growing up and becoming more, high school age, friends really were my family. And cool. It is what it is. And went on from there and went to college. Actually went to a couple different colleges. Started off at John Carroll, and I had a really good time my first year, but my grades reflected that. And so bounced around to a couple colleges after that, and then ended up graduating from Baldwin Wallace. And while I was at BW, I'd gotten a job in banking, working for a small little bank, Star Bank, and ended up spending 20 years in the banking field, doing all different types of banking, from commercial real estate to private banking. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to read financials. I learned a lot about how to structure deals. I learned a lot about networking, but I hated every day of it. Like it never fulfilled me. I liked the money, and I kind of always justified it as, well, the money's allowing me to do things that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do, take vacations or buy the nice cars, and just got fed up with it. And then, when the economy tanked, it was interesting. I'll tell you a story. Mm-hmm. So right around the time I was really struggling with being in banking, and I met a guy by the name of Philip Lynch, and Philip was just a phenomenal guy. He graduated from Yale at 17 and started a bank in Germany that ended up being purchased by Deutsche Bank and set on the stock exchange. I mean, he built this wonderful company called Zurst Manufacturing, and he had retired from there and was spending the rest of his life giving away his money, but he didn't believe in giving it away. He believed in creating partnerships. And when I met him, he was pretty ill. And so one day he invited me to lunch, which was a big deal for him. And he said to me, Eric, you're wasting your life. Well, I think I'm doing pretty good. He's not. No, you were put on this earth to help small business. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, I'll give you $250,000 if you can come up with an idea. And so I thought a lot about it, and I'd call him occasionally and be like, how about this? And he'd be like, you're not thinking big enough. And he'd hang up, and or I'd call him, what about this? You're on the right track. Think bigger. And he ended up passing away probably 6-7 months later. And it just affected me. And so one day, the economy is tanking and banking had changed, and it had been probably about 7-8 months since Philip died. I said, I'm done with this. And I went to work for an organization, ECDI. I bought them here to Cleveland when they're a nonprofit microlender, and we did that for about 5 years. And then my wife and I started a consulting company, Westport Capital Consultants, with the goal of going into communities that have experienced loss and then helping them think through economic development strategies utilizing entrepreneurship, which is how I ended up here with the NEO Fund. Tim McCarthy in the Business of Good had hired us to come in and help them think through this. So my background's been varied. I think it's a good foundation to get me to where I'm at and where I want to go. But the struggle's been there along the way, kind of in all of those fields.
Very interesting story. Did you ever receive the $250,000 from Mr. Lynch?
I did not. Mr. Lynch passed away before I could come up with an idea. Although I think about Philip often. He was just an amazing man, and I know he's smiling now, saying like, "This is what I told you. This is where you were supposed to go."
That's really cool because to me it seems like the money is just the afterthought, right? He began to set the wheels in motion for you.
That's all it was, right?
Yeah, which is cool. So you're an entrepreneur. You started off as in the banking industry, and then you found your way to entrepreneur, to a place of being an entrepreneur. How was that transition for you?
Yeah. So now I can sit here and I can look back and say, I should have did it 20 years ago. But when you're going through that transition, especially, my wife, Jamie, wonderful woman, we have 4 boys, and we had 1 in college and 3 younger ones. And we had both decided to make this leap, and it was scary, right? Kind of thought we were crazy, but we decided we were going to do it, and we sent out a letter to all of our friends, families, colleagues, telling them that we did this, and this is where you could find us, and the support back was phenomenal. But we really did that so that there was no return, right? Like we're all in now, right?
Right.
But I would say all the time, I mean, for the first 6 months of us being in business, I sent out a resume every week. I knew where I was going to go if this didn't work out. We had given it, 6 to 12 months to see if we could do it. And we were very fortunate. For month 1, we were always profitable. We've grown it since then. But it was scary. But I think a lot of times the fear is what prevents people from doing it. But to me, getting down the road, I had always known that I wanted to do something for myself. So if I was laying on my deathbed and had the regret of not having tried this, that was more scary than having a business that perhaps failed. So, yeah.
So how long have you been an entrepreneur?
So I'm full on entrepreneur by ourselves, going on, 2.5, 3 years now. We have another endeavor that's been 5 years, which is the Cleveland Culinary Launch Kitchen, shared use incubator kitchen in the Midtown area of Cleveland, helping entrepreneurs create products and get them into retail. That started 5 years ago, and while that is a very entrepreneurial endeavor and has grown to the point now where it's, I joke, it's my other full-time job. The benefit of doing it 5 years ago was I was still employed, and so I still had health insurance, and I still had a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks. It wasn't relying on it to be my sole income. So that's the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting because, most entrepreneurs, they do find themselves at that place of fear that you and your wife were at. And sometimes they're really apprehensive about taking that leap. What always strikes me is unique about you is that this method that you had to where, as you mentioned, you knew where you were gonna go. I think that's unique, and I think that's important too because I'm, as you know, I'm like way on the other scale, but I think most entrepreneurs need to hear that.
Right. I really think it's important to, when you're starting an endeavor, to start with what happens if it all blows up. Right. If this all comes crashing down, what am I going to do? Because I think if you start running through the worst case scenarios, it's like, look, I'm not going to end up homeless. I'm not going to end up, my kids being taken away from me. I'm not going to end up hungry. I just got to go out there and get another 9 to 5 and maybe two another 9 to 5s to 2 jobs to make it work, but I'll get back on my feet. And when you take the fear of it out, right? So when you know what your plan B is, I think it allows you to sleep a little bit better at night. Just remove, kind of facing those fears head on and knowing what you're going to do, what your mitigating factors are going to be to those issues.
Right. Give me one piece of advice you think every entrepreneur should hear.
Wow. You could go with all of the don't give up. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a struggle. But I think the best piece of advice I can give somebody is terms, right? So we always talk about kind of this work-life integration, and we talk about people always talk about work-life balance, and what we wanted to talk about was work-life integration. So we believe a lot in if we're passionate about what we're doing, and for us it was making money while doing something that changed people's lives, right? That changed communities. We're passionate about changing communities, whether that be through the kitchen or through Westport or Neo. I mean, that's all of that work is tied into that same thing. For us, it was important that we be able to integrate that into our lives so that it wasn't kind of at 5 o'clock it all turned off, but it allowed us the freedom to be there for our kids, do work that was impactful, which gives us energy, which also puts food on the table. So I think for entrepreneurs, it's like, look, there's going to be struggles, there's going to be ups and downs, but if you built your business around what you want your life to look like, then I think that's winning. I think that is the ultimate definition of entrepreneurship, is being able to build that life on your own terms, and your work is just integrated directly into that.
I agree. Do you think there's a lot to be said as an entrepreneur, and I'm picking it up from your message, that there should be a certain amount of give back or certain kind of, I don't know if I want to use the term philanthropic, but some kind of social component to your approach?
Yeah. So I do think that social enterprise is kind of the wave of the future, right? I think especially the younger generation, the millennials, if you will, they make spending choices based on how a company makes them feel. They're more about the experience than anything else. I think nonprofits is a dying breed, right? So I think that if you have to rely on funding from somebody else to continually make sure that your message is out there, then it's going to be a struggle, because there's things as, funders fatigue. Funders get tired of funding the same things over and over again. So I really think that social enterprise, this concept of this triple bottom line, right? So you're going to make money while doing good and doing well. That's, I think, is being integrated in more and more businesses. I mean, you see the business model of Tom Shoes or Warby Parker, and there's more and more of those things out there. I mean, there's great people doing great work out of the Cleveland area around food waste, right? And turning this into different food sources for animals, or turning it into composting. Their business model is such that they are making money while doing something that's important to them, which is eliminating food waste. And I think more and more companies you're seeing kind of have that social integration into it. Is every business going to need to be like that? No, right? I mean, I think, if you want to start a restaurant, maybe there's not a social mission to that. But I do think that culture is huge, right? How you treat your employees, how you treat your customers, from an ethical standpoint. And I think you see more and more companies looking at that.
Yeah.
Right? So the wage disparity between the top staff and the bottom staff shouldn't always be, in the past, it's just how it was. And I think you're seeing more and more companies address that.
Yeah. And to your point, we just had a young lady stop in our office today, and she had made mention about, to your point about funders fatigue, about a nonprofit that she's a part of. She sits on the board, and they've they've suffered significant loss in funding from an entity that had been given to them for 15 years.
Wow.
Like thousands of dollars. So I do agree with that. I do see that nonprofit being probably a really old approach to getting your message out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So who or what inspires Eric Diamond?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on that. So I'm not inspired by money. I mean, I think it's interesting because I received an email. I'd asked somebody not that long ago what motivates them. And they're a young couple, these people I was talking to. And it was interesting because they had answered me in a very good answer that what they had said, but she had sent me this email afterwards, and she said, the more I thought about it, I was embarrassed to say money motivated me. Mm-hmm. And I said, never be embarrassed. That doesn't make you sound greedy. By the way, if you have a business that isn't making money, it's not a business. It's a hobby.
You're right.
Right? But I'm older. I'm probably 20 years older than her. And so while money motivated me greatly when I was younger, what motivates me now and what inspires me now is creativity, and seeing how my work is impacted. I love, you and I here get the opportunity to fund businesses throughout, Ashtabula County. That's cool. Today you and I got to see one of the businesses that we funded that not long ago, and see how he has, used our money to grow and expand. And that was amazing. A vacant storefront.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Until he put this little, handmade products in there with soaps and lotions and things like that. And so that's inspiring to me. That inspires me. As we talked about, kind of leading the life on my own terms, that inspires me. The fact that I don't have to answer to anybody. I mean, sure, you have to answer to boards and you have to answer to your customers, but I don't have somebody dictating what my time looks like.
Right.
I'm free to do that. That inspires me. Teaching others kind of the lessons that I've learned over my career, that inspires me. Yeah. Seeing when the classes that we do, the Go Biz Grow classes, those greatly inspire me.
Right.
To see people who have ideas and are passionate about getting them out there, but be really looking to us to help them figure it out. That inspires me.
It sounds like you appreciate not having your creativity capped.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
We talk about this, right? We even bring it up in our class. Not to get too deep here, but the economic theory that we have as a community is that we were all put on this earth to be labor to somebody else, and that somebody else is an entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur is the only person who can act, think, and be free to be creative. And what our economic independence is based on what they're willing to pay us. Well, what if we turned that model and we said that everybody has unlimited creativity and everybody is capable of being an entrepreneur and everybody is capable of starting their own path? If we inspired more people to do that, what would that look like? And I think that's when you begin changing communities. I think that's true place-based economic development. Instead of worrying about bringing the next 500,000 employee company to an area, why not grassroots, 500 companies? And I think, again, that's where you begin to create true economic equality. And, that inspires me.
Yeah, it sounds like a world I'd like to live in. I have another question for you. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun?
Yeah, fun.
Yeah.
Like when you're not in business mode.
Right,
right. What's Eric Diamond do for fun?
Yeah, so I've got two small boys that are still, I've got a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old who are very active. Everything from gymnastics to karate. So watching them and being with them is a ton of fun. I read a lot. If I don't have a book with me, I have one on my iPhone that I'm listening to. I drive a lot, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks and a lot of podcasts. I don't read a whole lot of nonfiction or fiction. I read a ton of nonfiction, kind of inspired and taking lessons from people before me that have led the lives that I want to lead. And then I love to cook. My wife and I love to grow things in the summer, and we've got the gardens going and the herb gardens going. And then I'm really passionate about making beer and wine. Like, it's just, to me, there's something really soothing about, taking all of these ingredients and fermenting them. And then it's not bad that it turns into alcohol. So those are the kind of things I do for fun.
That's cool. That is really cool. A family man at the core. Okay. Well, it's time for a break.
Time for a break from our sponsors. Break. All right, cool. We will be back.
This episode of True Struggle is brought to you by the David Miller Group. The David Miller Group is a social entrepreneurial enterprise. DMG encourages people to make positive impacts in their communities by motivating and inspiring individuals and entrepreneurs. Check them out at www.davidmillergroup.com for more information.
All right, we're back on Based on the True Struggle, the podcast with Eric Diamond and David Miller. And today you're listening to the Eric Diamond interviews. He has given us a lot so far, and we're going to delve just a tad bit deeper. So, Eric, you mentioned you like to read a lot. I'm just going to throw you on the spot here.
Yeah.
Give me two.
Yep.
And if you can come up and conjure up a third.
Sure.
2 to 3 books that you think every entrepreneur should read.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the titles because I can't think of the authors right now. I'm always terrible at that. I'm also terrible at remembering people's names. You know that, David. So one that I found, and actually I do remember his name, is Brad Feldman, was a book, Startup Communities. And it's a book that I actually had shared with you.
Awesome book.
Really about kind of this guy's experience in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, starting up a community of entrepreneurs and what that looks like. And the thing that I found fascinating about it is, you think of Denver and Colorado and Boulder's startup scene. Now it's legendary, but back then when he was looking at this in the early 2000s, the only place startup communities existed was Silicon Valley, and he wanted to prove that you could do it other places. And so great read. Another book that I just read was called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, a guy by the name of Donald Miller. And great book where it really talks about kind of what we've been talking about, which is here's a guy that seemed to live a pretty ordinary life, and he woke up one day and realized how average he was, and he wanted to change that. And it's kind of his journey of coming to this epiphany of what he wants his life to be, and how does God fit into that for him, and how does that his career fit into that for him, and what is it he truly wanted out of life. And then another book, so those are two, and then there's a book called Tribes that I think is pretty interesting, and I don't remember who wrote that one. And then a book that just for some reason has always fascinated with me is a book by Sherwin Anderson called Winsburg, Ohio. And it's fictional. It's a book I read in college about all of these crazy people that make up this village. And to me, it just always kind of spoke to that's the kind of village I want to build, right? With these different characters and people seeming to live ordinary lives that are pretty extraordinary.
Cool. What would have been really sweet is if when you said, I'm bad with names, you should have said, you know that, John.
All right, Steve, what's the next question?
Tell me a story. All right, so we're going to wrap up, but this is a question that I think we like to ask all entrepreneurs, and it is a challenging question. Because when it was asked to me, I really was at a loss. But what is one question that you wished more people would ask you?
Yeah, that is a challenging question.
What is the one question that you feel like So you got this brand, you're this person, you got the Launch Kitchen, ECDI, Neo Fun, all these different things.
Right.
That doesn't really.
Yeah. Honestly, I wish people would ask me more about what motivated me to do it all.
Okay.
Right. And so I get a lot of people saying, you're hard to read. And I feel like I know you, but I don't know you. And I get that. Right. I mean, I don't do it as, it's not something I consciously do.
Mm-hmm.
But, growing up the way we grew up, especially at those young ages, my motto back when I was like 4 and 5 was like, never cried, never will.
Right.
And that stuck with me for a long, long time. Through college and even in my early working life, when the way you grow up is you just don't walk around with those feelings on your sleeve, right? And so I think a lot of people just assume, I grew up this wealthy kid who went to private schools and kind of had it made. And I don't know where that comes from because, that couldn't be further from the truth. I also think, though, that it also comes from the fact that I don't let a lot of people in. I have a very close inner circle of people that I trust and people that I respect. And I don't let a lot of people in. But I think if someone were to sit down and say hey, I think you're hard to read. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to open up to them and tell them about kind of the journey that I've had and been on. And I think as human beings, and I'm guilty of doing just the opposite. I'm guilty of asking people a ton of questions because I really am fascinated and want to know about them.
Right.
But answering very few questions.
Mm-hmm.
I do realize when people start going down certain paths, I deflect a lot and change the subjects. And but I think as I've gotten older, and especially kind of in this work that we're doing, I think it's important for people to understand what motivates you and who you are really behind that curtain. I think other two is I think I throw people off. Right?
Why?
Well, I'll show up to meetings in, Chucks and a t-shirt and jeans. Right now I'm rocking
Just a tee.
Good Food is Dirty, which is a friend of mine's company, Fresh Fork. And I showed up to meetings like that to sign on a business loan.
Right.
I think I throw people off. I'm short and wear funny glasses, crazy socks. So I guess I am hard to read, but you know what I mean?
But you're comfortable.
I'm comfortable.
I think that says a lot about success, being comfortable. It does to me anyway. You touched on something. I know we're running out of time, and I think you've given our listeners a lot, although this is just scratching the surface on who you are.
Right.
Which I think is going to come out more and more throughout the podcast. But you said something that was very interesting to me and said you don't let a lot of people in. Do you think that's useful? Is that a default mechanism? Is that something you consciously do, or
no? Not something I consciously do at all. I do think it is a defense mechanism. Yeah, and I've thought about that a lot over the years of why if I looked back at I have lots of acquaintances, but few people I call friends. And do I think that I do think that way too often. The kind of the whole loose lips sink ships. I think that people do sometimes say too much. I hate gossip.
Yeah,
right?
me too.
Stay in your lane type thing. Has it served me well in business? It has, right? Because I do think that I can make a connection with you that is very professional and very comfortable. Without kind of all of the baggage of feelings.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have become really, really close, and we've shared those things, which is how this kind of whole podcast started. But I think, a lot of times, especially growing up, you would look at something like that as weakness.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you my fears because you can use that against me.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you what my weakness is because you're going to use that against me. And so for me, it makes me a damn good poker player.
Yeah, true.
and I think it's made me good in business.
How was your poker game?
It's
good? Solid?
You want to do it right now?
No, I
want to play.
no.
Throw some down.
Texas Hold'em?
Yeah, let's do it.
Nah, I'm no good.
But I think also at times it leads to perhaps more stress on me because I don't tell anybody what's going on. Even my wife sometimes. I mean, she'll know. She knows me. You know, we've known each other now for 15 years. She can tell when something's bothering me.
Right.
And she also knows when to ask and not ask. Like, there's just certain things that I'm just going to deal with on my own.
Right.
You may never know about them.
Is that good for you?
I think it works for me.
Yeah. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like,
Yeah, it works for me.
okay.
I'm comfortable in my skin.
Yeah, that's it. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm comfortable in my skin, and I think it's actually taken a long time to say that.
Yeah.
That I'm comfortable in my skin.
Yeah. I mean, not to attract any of the attention on me, but I was talking to a group of kids the other day, and the question came up, and they asked me how, Mr. Dave, that's what they call me, or D-Mill, how many friends do you have? And I was like, one? Like, and then I kind of made this excuse, but it was real. I have different categories for people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I hear that.
And I don't know, friends are a little bit different, but man, I have people I consider mentors, accountability partners. But friends, and I guess why I was only saying one, if I'm being fair to them, is because they have too many.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
right.
it's not normal to have one friend.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to show them, like, you could be successful without having a flock of pigeons around you all the time, like eagles fly alone kind of method. So
I like that.
yeah, so they don't flock. They're one of the only birds that don't flock. So these kids these days, they think with social media, they post something, they care about likes. One of the last questions I have for you as we segue into it, what's your social media game like?
My social media game needs to be stepped up a bit, a lot. So with the Neo Fund, we have somebody, David Carlton, that does it for us. With the kitchens, we have someone that does it for us. With my own, I can't tell you the last time I posted. And part of it for me is I never want to feel like I'm bragging. Right. And I feel like a lot of people on social media are bragging.
Yeah,
right?
but it's so not real, too, for a lot of them.
Yeah, it's so not real, right? And so they've built this life that they want everybody to see. And for me, that just seems awfully sad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not it, right? I'd rather you show me your struggle than the fancy car that you just bought that I know you can't afford.
Amen.
Right? So it's not that I steer away from social media. I think, and believe me, I think social media is important. But I guess what I'm saying is, here's the other thing. I hate when people wish their wife a happy birthday, or today if you go on Happy Valentine's Day.
I know, it drives me bonkers.
Like, really?
Like you got a photo with you and her. Like, why? Like, I honestly thought about you when I was strolling down my timeline earlier. I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to see Eric and Jamie Dimon with these hearts bubbling all around them say Happy Valentine's.
Nope.
Like, why? Why do people do that?
I don't get it. Right? I woke up this morning and I wished my wife a Happy Valentine's Day, and I gave her a kiss before I walked out the door. I don't understand why you would give a damn that I wish my wife a happy birthday.
You know what it is.
Or a happy Valentine's
Day.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Now, you just time-stamped our podcast.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then the other thing is this. People give open invites to their personal relationships, and then they wonder why they don't work out.
Exactly right.
I mean, seriously, like, I could never imagine, and I'm hoping, as I say this, my wife's not posting something to me, but she knows she could tell me, hey, babe, happy Valentine's Day, right?
Right.
And I'm cool not sharing her or our relationship, good or bad, with the rest of the world.
Yeah, me too.
I'm fine with that. But yeah, I really appreciated you opening up for our podcast here and to our subscribers. And, you said a lot of things that really stood out to me, and I don't know, man. I hope the listeners got as much from this as I have, but I'm tired of. I guess this is why we do what we do.
Right.
Stop showing us the glittery, fancy life. that's a lie, show us your struggle.
Right, man. Show it.
Show the struggle.
And own it and be proud of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what makes you you.
And I'll tell you this as we wrap up. Kids need to see your struggle. Our youth today, they need to see it.
Truth.
Because they have been hypnotized, programmed, and led to believe that life isn't worth living unless you got the fancy cars and the hot women and all the money. And it's all right. Like, all superheroes don't wear capes, man.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's all right to be just a stand-up citizen. Like, get your garbage out on time, pay your taxes. Like, little things are all right, right?
Hug
Own
your
a
kids.
home. Yeah, hug your kids. Let people know. Like, come on, man. There's so much. We only have so much time on this earth. And, you know, faking the funk. And I get it. Fake it till you make it. But some of us are just faking.
Yeah.
We're not even trying to make it.
No.
So this is why we will never say fake it till we make it again. From now on, it's make it till you make it.
I like it. Make it till you make it.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us on our first ever glitch-filled, error-filled podcast based on a true struggle. We are looking forward to taking you guys on many, many more journeys with Eric Diamond and myself, David Miller.
Check back next week for number 2, which will be an interview with our own David Miller. David, thank you for this. This has been awesome.
Yeah, this has been cool, Eric. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Peace.
All right, thank you.
Based on a True Struggle is a production of Ideation Corporation Unlimited. This episode was produced by Eric Diamond. Site design by David Miller. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or anywhere you get great podcasts. Our theme song is Pushed Through by Dreamlight. Follow us on Facebook or check out our website at www.truestruggle.com. That's www.trustruggle.com. You can email us at info@truestruggle.com. Feel free to leave us a message on our listener line at 440-941-8443. If you like what we are doing, give us a rating on iTunes and tell all your friends about us. Thanks for listening, and until next week, peace.